The Dynamo Strings and the Dominant Pro Strings are two completely different string sets. Now you may be wondering, why is that? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be very specific and dive into the details of each string set. What are some of the pros and what are some of the cons? Because they're in completely different categories and in different sound worlds. And I hope that this video will get you more informed to what these strings are all about. And thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this review. I feel like the first thing that string players think about when buying strings is the price. Like, am I gonna get the best bang for my buck? And these Dominant Pros, they run around $100 for a full set, and that is with the E10 on carbon steel string. However, the Dynamo strings are gonna run a very much more expensive string at the $140 range plus taxes and fees depending on your location. So these are very different categories with these two strings, you know? Like, now you may be wondering, like, what's the difference between the $100 and the $140? Well, believe it or not, there's a lot to break down. I'm going to break down what Thomastik Infeld does to break down its strings. We're going to talk about the sound, we're going to talk about the playability, we're going to talk about the break-in time, we're going to talk about the warmth, the brilliance, the focus. All of those categories I feel like are completely relevant to a string player, because depending on the context in which you are playing in, whether you're a chamber musician, whether you are a soloist or an orchestral musician, you are looking for different things. So here's the breakdown. Now, this may be more specific towards your instrument, but we have to talk about tension, because the tension is slightly different from the Dominant Pros to the Dynamos. The tension for the Dominant Pros is 22.6 kilograms or 49.7 pounds. So this is, a relatively medium tension string. However, the Dynamos are 23 kilograms and 50 pounds. So there is a bit of a higher tension, just a little bit higher compared to the Dominant Pros. Now, it's a slight difference. To me personally, I did not feel a difference. I felt subjectively that the Dominant Pros felt really close to the same as the Dynamos. So, if you're really specific with the tension, that's something that might interest you. For me personally, I did not feel a huge difference in the playability. Speaking of which, let's talk about the playability of the Dynamos and the Dominant Pros. So they both have an equal amount of easy playability. I find them to be really, really easy to play, and especially a nice grip to the string with my bow and my rosin. So you're not gonna have any trouble playing these strings. Now I'm going to break down the sound of the Dominant Pros. So for me, in my experience in testing and real world use, I found that the Dominant Pros are excellent strings for balance across all four strings. So if you are looking for a similar quality sound from the E string to the G string, and without losing a lot more darkness or warmth, like everything kind of sounds equal, then the Dominant Pros may be a good fit for you, because the G string is nice and rich and it's a more focused sound. I feel like the Dominant Pros are leaning a little bit more towards the Peter Infeld, which actually provide a very focused sound. What does focused mean? Focused sound is when you are trying to play your instrument and you want, like if you're a soloist in front of an orchestra and if you want your sound to pierce through the orchestra, then a focused sound may be beneficial for you, because you are able to actually let your sound cut through the big orchestra sections. So it also has a little bit more brilliance than the Dynamos, and in terms of articulation, I feel like the articulation is really good on the Dominant Pros. Like if you're doing sautier, spiccato, you're definitely going to get a nice crisp sound. The break-in time for the Dominant Pros are really easy and a very short break-in time, and you're going to probably experience, depending on the humidity and all other factors. I found that in the winter time, when I was reviewing the Dominant Pros, they started breaking in like a day and a half. So really not that long. But again, they are really good strings to use. Like if you need a backup set, Dominant Pros are reliable because they can break in really, really easily. Now, the Dynamos, however, are also very interesting, and they are intended for a very different kind of player. What do I mean by this? I mean that if you are looking for a string that has a unlimited potential of sound colors, then the Dynamos could be a good fit for you. If you're wanting to expand that sound color palette, I feel like this may be a better option for you, because the Dynamo Strings, again, they're not meant for a beginner violinist. You know, a beginner violinist is not going to understand how to use the nuance of the Dynamo Strings. Personally, like, I actually performed Dvorak's Dumki Trio with the Dynamo Strings on, and I found that I was able to blend really well with the cello, and also blend in with the bass left hand of the piano really easily. But if I wanted to project, I can. And I think that requires a specific skill set to be able to understand how your instrument works, and also how the violin bow with contact point. I feel like Dynamo Strings are important to understand when it comes to contact point. If you understand the contact point of your instrument, you're gonna have a more variety of colors and sounds. Something that I actually forgot to mention with the Dominant Pros is that the feeling under the fingers, like the quality of the string underneath your left hand, they're both very good. Dominant Pros and Dynamos, I would say equally, they are the same feeling underneath the fingers. And that also kind of chimes into the playability of both strings, because you want a string that is just effortless to use. And both strings offer that. However, when it comes to the sound, you're going to have a more complex sound with the Dynamos. So again, talking about the sound colors, you know, Dynamo and Thomastik Infeld has been really adamant about, you know, combining the uncombinable. Now, again, that is very vague marketing. But to me, what I see and what I hear is that you are able to push the Dynamo Strings to a limit that you really can't with the Dominant Pros. And I think that's what makes these strings a little bit more unique. I think it could be actually because of the slightly higher string tension. It's slightly higher. Like, again, Dynamos are 23 kilograms on the dot, while the Dominant Pros are 22.6. So again, very small difference if we're talking like little tiny millimeters in difference. Even the Dynamo Strings are promoting itself as a rich and complex string, while the Dominant Pros are primarily going towards a focused sound, because if you look at the Thomastik Infeld chart, you have the dominants like right in the center, and then in like the bottom right corner, you can see that the Dominant Pros are like kind of easing towards the Peter Infeld. So that's something to keep in mind depending on your instrument. Some instruments like low tension strings. Some violins are able to withstand a higher tension string, and they sound perfectly fine. But in my experience and in my playing style, I tend to gravitate towards the medium tension strings, which again, these strings are almost identical in terms of tension. So, you know, you're not going to struggle if you're going to be switching from Dominant Pros to Dynamos. They're going to be almost identical under the string. So to conclude, if you're looking for if you are looking for a more focused sound that is an upgrade from Dominants but not as expensive as Peter Infeld, then the Dominant Pros are for you. But if you are looking to really push the limits of your instrument, and if you're looking to really expand the sound color and the sound world that you have with your instrument, then the Dynamos are your next best thing. And I believe that, you know, I said in a previous video that the Dynamos are my new string set because of the rich and complex sounds, but it's not because of the price. Don't get me wrong. It's not because of the price that I'm getting these strings. It's because they just happen to fit my instrument very well, and I'm able to connect with these strings and do a lot more with them. And something that I think with the Dynamos is that if I think it, I'm able to do it. Dominant Pros are still like that. However, there's just that extra oomph that I'm not getting with the Dominant Pros sometimes. So that's why I decided to switch. So these Dominant Pros, again, very good strings. Nothing against them. These are good for any conservatory student or any professional musician who is looking to get a focused sound on a budget budget. It could be very subjective when it comes to the word budget, but if you're looking for a focused sound for under $100, then the Dominant Pros are for you. And if you are curious as to the sounds of these strings, I'm going to leave my official review of the Dynamos down in the comment section below. And I will also leave my review of the Dominant Pros down below. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. My name is Eric. I'm a violinist. I do violin videos, product reviews, and other violin related content on the channel. If you liked this video, I really appreciate you coming to the end, and I will encourage you to subscribe because that helps support me to create more amazing violin content for you. And also be sure to check out some other violin videos that I have on the channel right over here and right over here. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next one.